Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, and we talk about horror movies here.
Of the past and present.
You've not done that in so long. Are you feeling nostalgic?
Just in case people want to know. I figure we haven't said it in a while.
That's true, that's true. It's mostly been the present recently, but we need to find more time to fit some classics in, because it's been a lot of new stuff, a lot of direct-to-VOD, that kind of thing.
And what presents they've been.
Oh dear. It's almost like you've got an abusive father, but he doesn't like physically hit you, he just abuses you with the worst presents. Do you know what it's like?
Yes.
It's like your father's a big fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and he's doing his own experiment. You know, he's not quite shot us into space, but he's going to find us the worst movies that he can find and monitor our minds. That's
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's what it feels like. So yeah, what are we talking about this week? We are talking about a movie called Beyond the Gates, which is a horror movie that's set around an old VHS board game. If you're too young to know what that is, and you might be because it's been a while, I only ever played one. Although admittedly, when I played it once as a VHS game, I actually played it more as a DVD game later. Like they upgraded it. They put out a new version because they realised most people don't have VCRs in their house anymore.
I think I played one too. I wonder if it was the same one.
What's funny is though, the one I played has multiple names, so it might not sound like it's the same one at first, but I can tell you if it is. So what one did you play?
I don't remember the name, but it definitely was like a horror-based one with like a creepy, like Crypt Keeper-esque kind of host.
Yeah, it's the same one. It's the same one.
All right.
It's either called Nightmare or Atmosphere, depending.
Atmosphere, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, depending which version you got. But no, Atmosphere's the one I played as well. I played it both as a VHS game when I was really young, and then I got the DVD version for like Christmas one year, so we played it once and then never looked at it again, which is a shame. What I did like about those games though, I liked that you knew how long they were going to last. Like you knew without a doubt it was going to last 1 hour. Whereas, you know, as opposed to playing a game of Monopoly, which takes about 3 weeks to finish.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, they have their perks. But there were cool ideas. They were fun and goofy and cheesy. But so this movie is based around that idea. That there's a mystical horror VHS game that has
It's basically like the horror version of Jumanji almost.
Yeah, kinda.
Bit.
Yeah. But, I mean, I'd say it would be more like that if they had a bigger budget and could do crazier things. But, yeah, I see what you're getting at there. Yeah, that's a fair comparison. So, we'll start spoiler-free, as we always do, and we'll warn you before we get into spoilers. But before we do that, we'll give you some general thoughts and opinions and kind of what we can without spoiling any details. So, Tim, we've had quite a rough time this year so far. I think the ratio of good to bad is extraordinary, leaning towards the bad. There's been a few bright spots throughout, but were we on to a winner this week? Did you enjoy Beyond the Gates?
Alright, this one's a little tough because I wouldn't say that it was a good movie, but I feel like it was really close.
Right, okay.
I don't know, like everything about it I felt was just like a little bit off. Like I was like, maybe if the acting was a little better, if the story was a little tighter, if the directing was just a little better, if the special effects just had a slightly bigger budget, I think it could have been good. But I wouldn't say it was bad. It's not like I didn't enjoy it. It was just that little bit off.
I shockingly agree with most of what you just said. I like, because the movie starts right, and there's this little scene at the start, and then the opening titles kick in, and the opening titles, it's all close-ups of VCR mechanisms, like taking tape and playing it.
I really like that.
And there's this synth music kicks in, this 80s synth music, and like this, bright pink neon lettering on, and I was like, oh, I'm into this. Like, like, let's do this. And obviously it's about these two brothers whose dad owns this old VHS store. Has DVDs in it as well, but as they point out in the dialogue, he wasn't a big fan of switching to DVD. He liked the VHS era more. But they find this old game, and their dad's went missing, and they're clearing out the store because he's basically, at this point, presumed dead or whatever, and they find this board game, and it seems to be that the dad's soul's actually trapped in the game or something like that. And the tape's kind of creepy and doesn't act like a actual pre-recorded tape. It feels almost live. And do they play the game and try and get their dad back? And of course it's dangerous. Of course that they could get hurt themselves along the way. Also, one of the brothers' girlfriends is also a main character. So we've got this trio that are trying to figure out things. And I kind of agree with what you just said. And so much as I like the ideas, I never felt like it quite went far enough. Like I felt like, because the movies are like 85 minutes, if that, and I feel like eventually, because I think before I watched that, I was expecting them to go into some sort of world, right, and that kind of happens at one point, but it's really late on, and there's not really that much special about it.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like it was going to be more of that earlier on, and that would be fine if it wasn't the case. But like it was just like one example of it being kind of restrained, where I was like wanting it to go nuts. There's a couple of good gore moments and stuff like that, and I think it's the pacing and the structure is just a little bit off. That along with the acting being a little bit iffy. Like I don't think any of them are flat out terrible, but they don't really have much chemistry with the two brothers. Because the main character, Gordon, he's really awkward and like doesn't like to interact or hug people or anything like that, and it's like, I know what they're going for, but
he was the guy that I had like the biggest problem with, but I wasn't sure if it was because of his acting or if it was just because the character was supposed to be such a wet blanket. It's kind of hard to tell. Yeah,
it's funny because I can clearly see what they were going for with him. He's the stuck-up one who needs to loosen up. The other brother's the happy-go-lucky one who's much more pleasant to be around, but he's also a bit of a loser, doesn't have a job, and doesn't have a place to live, and that kind of thing.
And he wears a jacket that looks a lot like Charlie's from It's Always Sunny.
He does, actually.
It actually distracted me for a bit. I was like, yeah.
But, like, and you can kind of see where both their arcs are going to be. Like, the stuck-up one's going to learn to have fun, the non-stuck-up one's going to learn to actually take some responsibilities and not be a down-and-out loser. And you've got that. And that's fine, but it's just something about it never quite clicks. I mean, but at the same time, like right from the get-go, I was into everything that was kind of going on. I was like, oh, they're browsing this old VHS store, and whenever they're doing stuff like that, I'm noticing tapes in the wall. I'm like, oh, there's all 4 Home Alone movies. There's that movie. There's that.
If I had one big compliment for this movie is I loved like the whole nostalgia factor. Like I could have spent a whole movie just inside this video store. I liked how crappy like the shelves were. Like it didn't look like, like it looked like just some homemade like shelves, and like you said, all the videotapes you would notice on the wall. And I really liked that sometimes movies will try to mask stuff. I'm guessing for like copyright issues. They'll be like, oh yeah, that guy from Gun Splatter 4 or some obviously made up thing. But I like that they actually use like the actual movies, and when they made references, it was to real stuff.
Yeah, the other time they did it is when they actually made a point of holding something up to the camera so you could clearly see what it was. That was the only time it was a fake movie.
That cop movie.
Yeah, like they made a fake movie for that, because I think at that point it would be a copyright issue by actually holding it up and saying what it is. But when it's in like just a sea of like spines in the background, you don't get hit for that.
Doesn't matter.
At least I don't think you do. I think because it's just in the sea of titles, and it's not prominent enough to make it.
Yeah.
So.
Or at the very least, like who would care enough to make a stink about it?
Alternatively, you potentially could have thousands of people making a stink because there's like thousands of tapes in the background at any one time. And now because everything's in at least HD, you can kind of read what they all are for the most part. Like they're, back in SD days, you couldn't make out shit with this. You'd be like, oh, that kind of looks like the Predator VHS, but I can't really tell. So that's always fun. My main problem, other than some of the acting feeling a little bit just kind of subpar, was the fact that the main plot felt like it took a while to get going. because the whole game revolves around finding these 4 keys, and it felt like they didn't get the first key until like it was like halfway through the runtime, and at that point they still hadn't accepted that they were playing the game, and they didn't realize they were playing the game until I don't know, like after that. So by the time I felt like what this movie needed was for them to realize by the end of the first act, we're in this game, we're locked into it, and if it's about finding these 4 keys in the real world with these cryptic clues and all this, then it can be like, then the bulk of the movie should be the hunt for these 4 keys. Like, I think it could have been clearer that way. Whereas a lot of the time is spent on, oh, this is weird, I don't know if we should do this, and that kind of upset the balance of the pacing for me.
And it was almost like 2 different movies. Like, it feels like there was one movie that was basically just about these brothers, reconnecting, and the one brother coming back home and, kind of facing his family again, and, going through their dad's stuff. It feels like that was like kind of separate from what the main plot ends up being, which is playing this, haunted board game or whatever.
Joe's funny. Like, they have a couple of like gore scenes, which I like. Like, there's a couple of cool gore moments, right? Yeah. But I almost think you should take them out. I actually think that this would almost work better with kids. Like, if you instead of having 2 adults, have 2 like 12-year-olds, or 3 12-year-olds rather, playing the game. Like, that
could be really interesting.
And make it more of a, I mean, sure, have it horror themed, have like horror imagery and stuff, but make it more fun horror, and make it more of like an adventure. Because that was the other thing, is when they eventually do have to cross into the world beyond the gates, like, it felt like it ended really quickly after that. Like, it was really easy. Like, there was no difficulty in what they were doing. So the ending felt like a bit of a damp whimper, but and it's a shame. It felt like so many things were cool ideas, but it wasn't quite nailing them throughout.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm assuming that a lot of it was probably just, budgetary restrictions. Like, obviously this is, a smaller independent movie. Maybe they had bigger ideas but just didn't have the budget for it or something.
They did get Barbara Crampton, though, for the host on the VHS tape.
That is true.
Which, admittedly, I don't think she maybe carries that high a price tag. But, I mean, for horror fans, she's a name that you recognise. Like, Reanimator. And you think about it, so.
I wonder how old she is at this point. Because, like...
I think she's pushing 60.
Okay, because one of the guys, like, mentions when they're watching the tape, like, oh, wow, this really, hot girl's on it. And I was like, yeah, she does look really good. Like...
Yeah, I think she's close to 60, so she is looking good for her age.
Yeah, well, props to her.
So, I'll let that bite go by.
Sorry.
But no, I think I don't want to sound like I'm being too down on it, because I actually I thought it was an enjoyable enough watch. I don't regret watching it. It was not painful like a lot of the movies we have watched recently.
Right. Yeah.
It was an easy going enough watch. I liked the ideas that were on play. I probably wouldn't watch it again because of all these factors, where it wasn't ultimately that fulfilling. But it at least was like, I could see the charm in what it was doing. It just never, unfortunately, it never really became what I wanted it to become, based on all the bits that it was, it was giving me all the starting pieces, and it was never quite pushing it to where I was like, oh, this is going to get really fun and wild, and it never really got there.
I 100% agree. At night, I'll usually talk to my girlfriend just to like say goodnight and stuff, and we'll usually ask each other like, oh, like, how was your day, what'd you do, blah blah. And
oh, wait a minute, just before you finish this story, is the answer usually after you've watched the movie for streams like, oh, Pierre made me watch this thing, I'm thinking of jumping off the building?
Well, it's usually not that extreme, but I usually will tell her like, oh, I watched a movie for the podcast, and then like she asked me, oh, like, how was it? And yeah, yesterday she was like, oh, like, how was it? Would you recommend it? And what I said was, I wouldn't go out of your way to watch it. Like, if it's ever streaming and you have some time to kill, it's a perfectly fine movie, to take up. But yeah, you don't have to like, bend over backwards to try to find a copy, or pay $20 to do it. I wouldn't go that far out of the way.
What was your response to would you recommend it with, I don't know, what was one we did recently, Peelers, like last week's Peelers? Like, what was the answer to that question?
That was a lot longer. That was probably like a 20-minute like rant of me explaining why this was bad, and after like 5 minutes looking at the phone, realizing that it had hung up.
Oh dear. All right, so let's get into some spoilers then. I think
Okay.
we've done the
Yeah.
spoiler free. So spoilers from this point on for Beyond the Gates. So they find the videotape, they watch it. We find out that the cop friend can't see what's on the tape, so the tape's supernatural. It's only showing to them, and like the Barbara Crampton on the tape waits for them to do something before saying the next bit. So she's like not saying live is maybe simplifying it too much, but she's it's supernatural. She knows what they're doing, and like they find the keys. Do you know what? Here's a weird thing. I thought by the end of the movie they were going to reveal that all the people that died didn't actually die, because I thought it was really dark. That like I mean, the first guy was this douchebag that was John, the other brother's friend. He was a complete dickhead. So when he like died, it wasn't that big a deal, especially since as he was dying, he was trying to harass someone.
Yeah.
But then,
and I would also say that his death scene was probably one of the highlights of the movie. I thought that looked the best.
It's, even the cop friend, like, I thought his death was pretty cool. The whole like how because the way it's almost like a voodoo thing. They find a key in something, and they have to bash it, and it does the same thing to the person. And like the cop's head like gets bashed in. But he was actually a nice person, so like, he's dead, and there's no mention of it at the end of the movie. Like they don't bring their dad back; they save his soul. Like the whole argument at the end is that his bodies can't come back, but you've saved his soul. Now his soul can go to whatever. And at the end, they're all happy, and the brother's hugging like, "Oh, come back to town." And yeah, there's a spare room with your name on it if you ever visit us. And they're mended. And I'm like, your legit friend died. And technically you killed him. So, actually, how did you even explain that? Like, his body's still lying in your backyard, but for the sounds of it, like, people are going to come looking for him. How do you explain his body being bashed to death in, like, your house? Like, what? Explain it to me.
Yeah, at the bare minimum, it's probably going to be a huge hassle with a lot of paperwork and interviews. And
at worst, they're both going to prison for murder.
Sure.
I mean, admittedly, they won't find a murder weapon. And I suppose they can argue that he did storm into the house with a shotgun, firing it all over the place. But it's just something that's never really thought of or mentioned again. They don't seem to even... Beyond the initial reaction at the blood splatter, they don't seem to even react to it much. So there's another fault.
That would be great if there was just an extra scene added where he just like, you know, like comes in through the back door, just has like a huge gash on his head, and he's like, "I'm fine."
Dear. Oh, so, yeah, so like those scenes were fun. Like I say, them finding the keys seemed really sort of pushed towards the end of the movie. Like I feel like
it also seems like there wasn't that many. Like there's like what, 2 keys that they needed to find?
that was 4.
4? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was one for each corner of the board.
There was basically like 2 people that died though. Just the like friend of the cop.
There was 2 people who died. They got a third. I can't remember the third one. The fourth one was inside the father's heart. Like that's where they got.
Oh, right.
That's where they got the fourth one.
It didn't really feel like high stakes.
No, it didn't.
Because they, like, especially when you can play the game and then stop and go about your life and then pick it up at any point. I feel like it would be maybe a little more intense or have more drama if you're like stuck in this world where you had to complete these tasks versus like, oh yeah, you can do them, and then the next day, if you have to pick up some groceries or go to the store, that's fine. Just press play when you get back.
Yeah, like I was okay with that to a point, just in the sense that like again, that should be the first act, but it wasn't. It was like the first 2 acts were this. Like there's the scene where they go to the store to find out about the game, and I feel like that happened very late on. That should have been earlier. And the fun of the game should have taken up the bulk of the movie. And I feel like it didn't. I feel like they were still doubting it, still doing the weird, not weird, but sort of kind of family drama parts of it, and really late into the movie before stuff properly got going. Which is why I was saying it felt like it was held back. I don't know. Even if it was a budget thing, I think the script could be smarter. The script could be better paced in that sense, and
True.
It just it's rough in that sense, which is a shame because, like I say, it kind of feels kind of like how we talked about the Devil's Candy, and we said we
Right.
quite liked that, but it just missed the mark of being really good.
Yeah.
I'd say this is maybe a notch down from that, but
Right.
like I feel like had this hit the mark, it'd have been really good. But as it is, it's just kind of it's decent, okay, with some nice ideas. Is kind of how I feel about it.
Oh, definitely. One other thing I would like to point out that you touched on a little bit here is I really liked the music when I noticed it.
Mm.
Like I feel like it didn't have a consistent like good score, but every now and again music would kick in and I'd be like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm feeling this. But it wasn't really throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, because when they go through the gate in the last like 10 minutes, and I was getting all this because it was all this like bright green light and the music was getting good, and I was like, all right, here we go. Here's the main thing, and then obviously it lasted like 5 minutes, and it wasn't really a cool place. It was just the same. They were treating it like it was just like another world version of the same place. So it was the same house in the same basement, but just with like lighting and smoke. And it was kind of like, all right, so we've been building up the whole movie to just this. It felt really weird. Now, that's not to say that you can't do that well. Insidious kind of did that as well, but that didn't.
Oh, sure.
Like, we didn't even know there was another place to go until late on in the movie. That wasn't something that was building to the whole time. And plus, that one made more sense because it was meant to be like the ghost realm, like that was in the same place as ours. Whereas this felt like, oh, this is a different place. This is going to be like walking through the Crypt Keeper's lair and stuff. Like you were expecting graveyards and stuff like that, and it just kind of felt like it was unfulfilling after like the build up. And then they find the girl Margot right away. Then their dad, who's all evil and possessed, like tries to attack them, as well as the two guys that have died. Like they're there to attack them, and they fight them off. And that's pretty much it. It's just really easy. Like it just happens really quick, and it goes back again to there being no stakes. It just feels like they win super easy.
Yeah, it's like oh okay.
Yeah, so it's a shame. That's pretty much it. It's a really short movie, actually. I don't have anything else to really talk about.
Yeah. I don't really think there was.
That
much
reminds
else.
me, actually. I'm going to put up an image at the bottom right about now because I've just noticed Tim looking at his notes. And Tim sent me an image when he started watching this movie last night that said, Beyond the Gates, notes. And then the first thing he'd written was, movie, question mark. That's going down below. That's going on the screen.
Well, I never know. You little. Sometimes you get a little mischievous, tricksy mood. You might force me to watch. I don't know, a book or something. To make sure it's a movie. But I was just looking at my notes, which I think I gave up like 15 minutes in. I was like, I'm gonna stop taking notes. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it.
Did you basically decide there's not much to this, so I don't need to?
Pretty much, yeah. I think the only thing else I have written down that we didn't really talk about was my in the beginning when they're putting all the stuff up on the store, they have a Mount Rushmore of like monsters.
Yeah, I got this like sort of like almost like a painting just to the side of the building. Yeah.
So that was the only other thing I had. I was like, oh, what would be on my Mount Rushmore of monsters?
Yeah, there's a whole subplot. When we didn't mention this, there's a whole subplot with Gordon. Like, he's not drinking because he got really drunk one night, and he hurt Margot's wrist. Like he damaged her because he grabbed her just a little bit too hard. And like he's not drinking because he doesn't want to do that again. He's not trying not to be that person. And that gives you something for him to redeem himself for. But honestly, it's kind of, again, it feels kind of half done, where I didn't really feel like it ever.
The thing is, like, that's a perfectly reasonable excuse for him, like, not to drink and to be like, I guess for lack of a better term, like a party pooper or whatever. That's fine. But there were times I still got annoyed with it. Like when they first start playing the game, when all three of them are playing, and Barbara Crampton says something like, "Oh, now get up and look at the screen," and he doesn't get up at first, and Margot's like, "Come on, do it." And he's kind of like, and like gets up slowly, and at that point I'm like, "Oh, come on! Like not everything has to be such a chore. Like you don't have to be such a like unfun wet blanket about everything.
Yeah, he's kind of he's got the perfect face for it as well, though, doesn't he?
Oh yeah,
This sort of this moody face where which I guess was why they cast him probably, but
yeah.
he just looks like he's unhappy about everything all the time.
And I kept getting like the weird idea that like, oh, someone else is gonna sleep with his girlfriend, like because he just seems like so miserable, and it seemed like everyone else was kind of
Well, because at one point she tries to have sex with him, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not in the mood." And I'm
Well,
like, "What the hell?"
her and her brother had much more chemistry than they did.
Yep. No, that's that's accurate. Yep.
But I mean, again, I don't want to hammer on it too much, but I do think this maybe might have been better as two different movies. Like you probably could have done something cool with two brothers reconnecting in their father's video store and looking for clues and.
Well, I do think it would work as one movie. I think they just have to balance the elements better, because I think the two brothers reconnecting actually works really well to parallel with the nostalgia of it all. Like it's about back in the early 90s, late 80s when all this stuff was a thing. Like you're kind of going back to that time. So having two people who were close back then because they were brothers but now aren't, I think it actually helps the story of what they're doing. And if you want to make that the heart of the movie, whilst they're having this horror adventure, but the problem is that it's a little bit tedious because it feels a little bit repetitive and it's sort of drip feeding information out, because you kind of get what he did quite early on, but we still have a scene like late after we already know what happened. We get this scene where she tells the brother, she tells John. Really think about that. She tells John like this scene when they're doing dishes. No, it's not when they're doing dishes, but it's when they're at dinner, and she actually tells him, and she tells him everything out, like, and it just feels like, okay, I already got all this. Like you didn't explain it before, but you told me enough that I put this together.
You can tell,
yeah, and it kind of was like, all right, you're really drip feeding me this information. I think having, I don't know if I needed him to redeem himself like that. I feel like you don't need both. Like I feel like the story about the brothers reconnecting is. You can make that the heart of the movie. You don't need the other thing. You can make him being redemptive being the heart of the movie. You don't necessarily need both, but I think the brothers one works better because it has that parallel with the nostalgia and the time difference, and that kind of, they're looking back at their lives the same way that we're looking back to the technology with the plot, and that's kind of fun. It works in that sense. It just needed more of the adventure and more of the actual horror stuff to happen in the bulk of the movie, and it kind of didn't. We got a couple of weird scenes where like a long-haired ghost lady is kind of stalking him at night.
Oh right.
And it just felt kind of random, and I don't know why. I think it was just to like, get back to playing the game, you little shits. You're not allowed to ignore it. But it just kind of felt pointless, ultimately. And that's whatever. But nah, there you go. That's Beyond the Gates. It's an okay movie. There's some good ideas, but I don't think it capitalizes on them all. But anyway, so let's get to ratings. Tim, what would you give Beyond the Gates out of the old Zane, which is German for 10, in case you don't know?
I would just split it right down the middle. I'll give it a nice even 5.
5, okay. I think I'm going to be slightly more generous than that, just because I was endeared by at least the intention. And it never actively pissed me off. It was just kind of underwhelming. So I'm going to go with a 5.5.
Okay.
I'm going to nudge it just so it's just nudging above because to me 5 is mediocre.
Yeah.
I'm just going to nudge it above that. Nudge it above.
All right. Well, yeah, I get that. That's fair. And then if we're being really generous, if we rated this on a sliding scale with the other movies we watched this year, this would be like a 9.5 or something.
Oh, it's sad, but it's true.
Yeah.
Oh dear. All right, that's been Beyond the Gates. We'll be back next week with another Screams. What movie will we do? I don't know.
Ooh.
Or do I know? Maybe I do know.
We probably know, but
but you'll find out next week what it is. And there'll be some news by next week, and we'll give you a bit more details on Screams as how it relates to Screams. But look forward to that. So yeah, that's us. So thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you think of the movie if you've seen it in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. Helps us out a lot. Get us on Twitter at mild_fuzz for channel updates. You can get our individual Twitters. I'm at Wibble89. Tim's at Tim Vergulish if you want to just see us ramble about things. Some of Tim's bad jokes.
Hey.
You know, there's dad jokes and then there's just Tim's bad jokes.
I think there's room enough in the world for both.
Yeah. That in and of itself was a bad joke, I admit, but it wasn't a Tim bad joke. So there you go. That's everything. So thanks once again for watching. Keep watching scary movies. We'll see you next time. Right, keep it together, Pierre. Keep it together. Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter. That is Connor.
Wow.
I did not keep it together.
Wow.
I did not keep it together.